If you're like me, you finished this episode like... Yeah, this episode had me shaking my head faster than my girlfriend seeing me naked.
Nice sack.
I'm kidding, I don't have a girlfriend. There are so many new clues and theories to discuss, from what does Cobel have on Lumen, will Gretchen fall in love with Dylan's innie, Mark's reintegration, and the goats. We can't forget the damn goats. So warm up some waffles and make sure to like and subscribe. It's time to praise Kier.
I love you.
Well, it looks like Miss Cobel isn't taking Lumen's promotion. Instead, we find her 238 miles away from Salt's Neck, a fictitious town in the middle of nowhere. After having loaded her suitcase and narrowly running over Mark, we notice that she's fixated on something in the passenger seat, a breathing tube. This is the same tube we saw in Season 1 as part of Cobel's shrine to Kier, so obviously this means a lot to her. It's labeled Charlotte Cobel, with the date March 17th, 1944. Charlotte was likely a close family member, perhaps her mother, but the show has kept a lot of mystery surrounding Cobel's mom. At Lumen, Harmony tells Mark that her mother was an atheist.
You know my mother was an atheist.
But in the outside world, she says she was a devout Catholic.
You know my mother was a Catholic.
Whatever happened to Charlotte must tie in with Lumen, as it appears Harmony has some sort of leverage over them which may harm the company. One theory suggests that Cobel is the bastard child of one of the Eagans. This may explain why she's obsessed with the Eagans and why Helly has to be careful with how she handles her. Cobel could tarnish the Eagan name by going to the press and exposing the truth about Lumen and her heritage.
We didn't have to ask you back. You didn't have a choice.
She'll find herself back at Lumen and face to face with Helena, demanding that her needs be met if she is to return to MDR. After all, they're so close to finishing Cold Harbor, the mysterious case file with connections to Miss Casey. In my past videos, I've argued that MDR is attempting to bring her back, with Lumen's end goal to bring back Kier Eagan himself, a process which has not been perfected. Further proof of Cobel's relationship with the Eagans is highlighted in her jab at Helena.
Everything I accomplished, I earned, not because I was born into it.
She, unlike Helena, had to prove herself to Lumen. It's only because Cobel has something on Lumen that Helena acquiesces and asks if she wants to talk to the board. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know of any board that can be assembled at a moment's notice. In my episode 1 video, I theorized that the board isn't a group of people at all, but it could be a computer or motherboard. This would explain why we never hear the board speak. This board could be the consciousness of all the past Eagans who guide the company once they've died. It's also kind of weird that Natalie is the only one who seems to hear the board. If you rearrange the letters in her full name, Natalie Kalin, you do get antenna-like, but that just might be a coincidence. Helena also asks Cobel if she wants a reset. This might have a double meaning. Reset as in, hey, we got off on the wrong foot, let's start over again, or a literal reset of her severance chip. One theory out there is that Cobel is or was previously severanced. We see her carry this severance chip as a necklace, and it might explain some of the inconsistencies with her character. A reset could mean something more sinister, like wiping her brain so that she can start a clean slate with our innies. Cobel is set to talk with the board, but upon seeing Helena's driver, she backs off. Notice how he steps forward and the camera racks focus to him. To my knowledge, this is the first time we've seen him, but something about him makes Cobel back off. It seems like these two have some sort of history. This leaves Cobel's story up in the air. Will she come back to Lumen and simply accept her new position as head of the Severance Advisory Council, try talking with the board another day, or is she done with Lumen for good? Meanwhile, Mark's Outie has devised an elaborate plan to burn his retinas with the phrase, "Who is alive?" This is a desperate attempt to communicate with his innie, and one in which Ragabi says could lead to him permanently blind. Not to mention, how would his innie get a message back? We haven't seen Ragabi since Season 1 and the murder of Mr. Garner. Her character is shrouded with mystery. All we really know about her is that she once worked for Lumen putting chips in people's heads. Now she's part of an anti-Lumen group reintegrating people back into society. One such person was Petey, and that didn't turn out so well. However, she says this was partly because Petey Petey didn't follow her instructions. Ragabi somehow knows that Mark is in this abandoned area underneath the train tracks. She knows he plans to burn a message into his retinas, and she knows about how the innies implemented the overtime contingency. She or the people she works with must have eyes on Mark and a spy within Lumen. But one of the biggest pieces of information we get is that she knew Miss Casey. She was alive the last time she saw her. In fact, it's even possible that it was Ragabi who put a chip in Miss Casey's head. Mark's Outie is so in pain over the death of his wife, he doesn't even let Ragabi finish her sentence when she asks if he wants the two parts of his severed brain to be sewed together, a process that could have him end up like Petey. She tells him she's gotten better at this, suggesting there have been others who have gone through this process. That means there could be Lumen employees we know who are hiding the fact that they've been reintegrated. You'll notice 5 different colored wires connected to Mark's brain, each one of them representing a different brainwave. I actually found this cool image which goes over each of these waves, and the colors match up with those found on Mark's wires. There are also red and blue wires in the intro credit sequence. I also found it interesting that there are 5 brainwaves and also 5 bins in the macro refinement computers. Perhaps by sorting the numbers, MDR is recalibrating a subject's brainwaves, like Miss Casey. Just like how our innies were given a list of questions upon arrival on the severed floor, so too does Mark. We don't know the technical specifics of what Ragabi is really doing here, but it looks like she's trying to integrate 2 separate waves, one from the innie and one from the outie, into one frequency. By putting them in sync, she is essentially sewing the 2 parts of the brain together. Although these questions don't give us anything too revelatory, we do find out Mark's mother's name was Fern, a name that interestingly symbolizes eternal life. We'll also see what appears to be salt crystals jump to the vibrations, and it might be a stretch if these are in any way related to this image found in Miss Casey's file. One thing I found quite ominous was Mark's right hand shaking, and you know it's not good when Ragabi is like, oh shit. Perhaps this was put in the show just to add a dangerous element to this procedure, or it could foreshadow Mark experiencing the same things that happened to Petey. By the end of questioning, it appears Mark has forgotten all of his Outie's memories, which leaves us with several questions going forward. Is Ragabi simply not finished the process? Will Mark experience the severed floor as his Outie? Or is this signaling that next episode will be a flashback where we see Mark's first day at Lumen? Meanwhile, Mark's innie has his own bizarre adventure as he and Helly continue their search for Miss Casey. They've even made these missing persons posters. The innies have devised a plan. Mark and Helly will venture to the GOAT department, Irv to optics and design, and Dylan is supposed to see if he can find anyone near the new break room. And we'll get to see why Dylan seems to be sabotaging the innies in a bit. In my last video, we talked about Helly not being Helly at all. This is actually Helena Eagan posing as her to infiltrate the innies. And this awkward non-kiss scene has got to be one of the biggest clues that support this theory. Helly is brash, confident, and wouldn't bat an eyelash to take the initiative and kiss Mark. That's what we saw at the end of season 1. This Helly is shy, submissive, and awkward. They make their way to the GOAT room from season 1, leading them to a poop-filled hallway that opens into a large indoor grassy knoll, one that is eerily similar from what we see in the intro credits. Here we'll meet Gwendolyn Christie's unnamed character who calls this place Mammalians Nurturable. For now, I'm just gonna call it the GOAT department. Her first line is, "Are you going to kill me?" And this isn't the first time we've seen this defensiveness when it comes to other departments. When Dylan meets Bert from optics and design, he also thinks he's come to kill them, stemming from an old story that O&D once massacred the MDR department. We've seen a painting of this titled The Grim Barbarity of Optics and Design in episode 105. But look what Dylan stumbles upon later in that episode when he's in O&D. That same painting, but now it's titled The Macrodata Refinement Calamity, and it depicts MDR killing O&D. Their badge colors have been reversed. It seems as though whoever created these paintings wants to sow distrust between the departments, because if the departments distrust each other, they're easier to control. They're not going to unify, and I imagine this is what's happening in the GOAT department.
Are you here to kill me?
At first, I thought the workers here might not be severed. However, this proves to be untrue when one of the goatmen divulges he met with Miss Casey, who said his Outie loved stargazing. Imagine being an Outie of one of these guys and coming home smelling like goat shit every day. It turns out Miss Casey would do their wellness sessions in the husbandry tanks, and all they really know about her is that she's retired. So nothing too revelatory here, except for this weird request that they see Mark and Helly's bellies. They are looking to see if they have pouches like a marsupial. And I think this leads leads into the very purpose of why there is a goat department in the first place. First, we must recognize that goat imagery is closely tied to Lumen's founder, Eagan. In the Taming of the Four Tempers painting, we get to see a goat represented as one of these tempers, with many believing it to represent malice. A goat dancer is seen during Dylan's waffle party, and goat imagery has been littered in the background even here in this episode. Various cultures, religions, and mythologies attribute several meanings to the goat, anything from sacrifice, rebellion, evil, and the occult. There's also a theory out there that Severance is heavily inspired by the 1894 horror fantasy novella The Great God Pan, and there are many parallels, including the God Pan who has the body of a goat, Pan's Labyrinth, like the hallways being a sort of maze, a doctor who performs brain surgery so that his patient can see another world, and one of the main characters being named Helen. But I have to imagine there's a real practical need for these goats, and with Lumen having its roots in the pharmaceutical industry, these goats may be used as test subjects for their various medical experiments. The goat department asking to see if Mark and Helly had pouches is an ominous detail that suggests experiments may have been tested on humans. If Lumen's goal is to control its workers, the goat is a good test subject as they're naturally more rebellious than, say, sheep. Goats have also been used in the past as clones, so there's a lot of messed up stuff Lumen could be doing with these animals. Back at MDR, Dylan is treated to the best perk of all, a chance to meet his Outie's wife. Dylan's apprehension at helping the other innies boils down to his desire to learn more about his Outie's life. In Season 1, he got that glimpse of his son, and now Milchik's been enticing him with the possibility of learning more if he plays ball, and Dylan doesn't want to do anything to screw this up. Well, his loyalty pays off when Miss Huang invites him to the security room, which has been renovated into that Outie family visitation suite Milchik showed him last episode. His good behavior has earned him 18 minutes with Gretchen, who he heard for the first time last episode when Dylan fumbled his job at the door factory. Notice how Gretchen wears purple here. Colors have specific meanings in Severance, with red tending to symbolize the outside world and blue the inside. Purple is created when red and blue are mixed together, so seeing Gretchen is a literal clash of the outside and inside world. Gretchen offers us some insight into Dylan's Outie, who's had trouble in the past finding his way. This is in contrast to Dylan's innie, who's great at his job and the complete opposite of a fuck-up. Gretchen's allowed to show him a picture of their family, including their 3 children, Jim, Ruth, and Merrick. Listening carefully to this conversation is Miss Huang, as Gretchen is not allowed to divulge any sensitive information, like how she accidentally let it slip that Milchik's first name is Seth, something the innies do not know. But the main purpose of this scene is quite manipulative. By telling Dylan there's a whole family counting on him, he'll be less likely to team up with the innies in their quest for answers. In fact, the show may be setting him up for a big betrayal later on. In the outside world, I get the feeling Gretchen does most of the heavy lifting, both in regards to the family and their relationship. As Dylan lazily sits on the couch reading the latest issue of Midlife Driver, she reminds him about one of their kids taking medication for their ear and the fact it's their turn to make cookies for Jim's class. Even this simple task of making store-bought cookies, she has to describe to him. And is it just me, or is that a tear coming down his face? A few seconds later, it's missing. Then there's the fact that she doesn't bring up that she went to see his innie today, something you'd think would be the main topic of conversation between these two. And did any of you pick up that in the innie scene she says "I love you" when she's about to leave, but doesn't say it to his Outie? If Gretchen and Dylan continue to meet, I foresee them sparking a romance. Innie Dylan is the man Gretchen wants Outie Dylan to be, and the moral dilemmas this would cause would make for great television. For example, would it be considered cheating? We'll find out she works nights and Dylan days, so that's gotta be stressful on their relationship as well. Some other interesting details I noticed were the little Kier doll, Milchik's pineapple gift basket on the table, and Gretchen's uniform. It's hard to tell, but it looks like she could be some sort of police officer or forest ranger. Dylan responding to her saying "copy that" suggests she may work with radios. I'd say the most surreal storyline this episode has to be Seth Milchik, whose devotion and hard work for the board sees him treated to a series of reimagined paintings in which Eagan is depicted as a black man. We've seen a lot of these paintings before, like the youthful convalescence of Kier, and Kier invites you to drink of his water. Race has not really been discussed in Severance. However, in the episode 1 podcast, Ben Stiller, Adam Scott, and Tremel Tillman, the actor who portrays Seth Milchik, discuss what being a black man at Lumen must be like.
And the question I asked is, does he know he's black? So what does it mean to be in a world that you are not represented in? And how does Milchik buy into that?
Episode 3 scratches the surface of this question, but as we'll see, Milchik stashes these paintings away. He does not want to see the blue eyes of this fake black here. And this is where we can ask ourselves, why? Is it a denial of his own identity? Is it a repudiation of what is clearly a tone-deaf appeal by Lumen to make him feel welcome? Learning more about Milchik and what makes him tick is something I hope we learn more about in episodes to come. I also want to briefly discuss what he was doing on his computer terminal. Here is the management control panel showing 4 personal ID listings. As far as I know, none of these numbers match up with the ID numbers of our 4 innies. But on the next screen, we'll see that this is some sort of surveillance system with the phrase executive drawer system. Whatever this is, it looks like Milchik has an eye on our innies and perhaps even our outies. This episode also gives us our greatest insight into Natalie Kalin. She, like Milchik, was gifted those Kier paintings, but did any of you notice that when she's talking to him, her lip quivers? It looks like she's trying to restrain herself from something truly terrifying. Natalie is also interesting because she's the only one we know of who has actually heard the board. She's assigned to recruit Rickon in creating a version of his book that would be suitable for the innies. Lumen knows that the innies found inspiration from his book, so if they're given a revised version in which Lumen can control the narrative, it could help maintain their control. This all seems to be in an effort to get MDR in line so it can complete its work on Cold Harbor. Then there's Irv, who takes a bit of a back seat this episode, but one that gives us some more clues about the mysterious elevator. Irv's recreated the image of his Outie's paintings, claiming his Outie likely saw this elevator in his dreams, but it still doesn't answer the question. If his Outie has never seen it, nor his innie, how is he having visions of it? His journey takes him back to O&D, where we meet Bert's old co-worker, Felicia. Upon showing him his drawing of the elevator, she instantly recognizes it. She calls this the Exports Hall, and they used to send their shipments there, but now Lumen sends a guy to do it. Milchik, perhaps? The word exports suggests a commodity that is then sold abroad. We know O&D has an army of 3D printers where they print everything from watering cans to hatchets. Could these be sent via this elevator to Lumen branches around the globe? But why then is Miss Casey sent there? Where is she going? Is she even still at this Lumen branch? With MDR working on a file that is connected with her, I doubt she's gone far. The main theory is that this elevator leads to a testing floor, a place where the severed are sent for procedures or retirement. Last episode, when Irv left a message to an unknown person on this payphone, he says he thinks his innie got the message, and this message is likely the Exports Hallway. Maybe it's a way for them to get out. That's why he kept painting this over and over again while drinking coffee and blasting loud music. He wanted his innie to fall asleep at work so that he'd dream about the black hallway, which we saw manifest in this black goo. Now we're about to get into our trailer sleuthing section, where we go over this season's trailer to see just what might be in store for us in episodes to come. This episode took a break from Outie Irv, but I think we'll be seeing more of him and what his relationship is like with Outie Bert. In this shot, we'll see that Irv is followed by someone, and we already know that Bert has been keeping tabs on him. I don't believe we've seen this person before, and they're standing in front of the Exports elevator. If I had to take a guess, this is the same guy in this shot who brings the melon for Irv's melon party. Cobel in some sort of underground tunnel. It's looking more and more like her character is not coming back to Lumen. We'll see images of Miss Casey, but we can't be sure if this is simply a hallucination from Mark. Here's Mark in the break room hallway, but notice how he's wearing a blue sweater and not his work attire. The same blue sweater we saw him wearing at Pip's. This is most likely the result of his reintegration. At this Asian restaurant, we'll see Outie Mark with Helena in the background. To my knowledge, this is the first time Outie Helly and Outie Mark have met. We'll see some sort of flashback between Mark and Gemma, which is extra awkward because it also looks like Mark hooks up with Helly. Our 4 MDR workers here, all in matching Russian-inspired winter outfits. We do not know if these are our innies or outies. Here is Helena being drowned, and it made me think of that bobbing for pineapples scene from the Lumen introductory video. Milchik in his white Russian-inspired outfit. Rickon in front of his typewriter. Will he go ahead and write those changes Lumen wanted to his book? This shot is super weird. It looks like Innie Irv is in a desecrated forest. Maybe he's having one of those dreams again. So there is still a lot to get into and even more mysteries left to be uncovered. But now I turn it over to you. What do you think will happen next? I want to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, and for more bad takes you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember,
I love you.